Scene.
And we're live. Scene?
Oh, we're not done.
No. We were just getting started.
Oh,
Scene is for the end of the episode.
Shoot. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not a Hollywood guy.
This is causing me to raise some questions about how you performed in the marathon last weekend.
Not very good.
Like they fired the little pistol, and you're like, "All right, I'm going to sit down now."
That probably would have helped with my time. I would have been able to do a few more stretches. I started running the opposite direction. I was scared. They blew the horn.
You know, like there's some things you just can't teach.
No, you're right. You're right.
Well, welcome to another episode of Zero to Traction. I think we're still a podcast about how first-time founders create companies at scale. Maybe we're just a podcast about.
I think we're a game show. It's a game show for how.
We are a game show. We're some type of AI-hosted game show where Cameron and I are the only contestants, and the audience are all losers.
There are no winners.
I mean, what I meant by that was that all we're doing is roasting these bad ideas that AI comes up with.
So it's a campfire. It's just a campfire that we're roasting these startup ideas as marshmallows.
The marshmallows. Yes. I imagine that before our audience begins objecting to our format, we should sell them on what we're trying to accomplish here. So we've gathered everyone here
today.
We've gathered here today to bless the union of early stage ideas with market reality through a process of customer discovery for an episode that we are calling the Overcoming Sales Objections episode edition of Zero to Traction. And that is a pun because we are actually not going to talk about how to overcome sales objections. We are going to talk about how in early stage startups, the sales objections that you're getting aren't objections at all. Wow. Cameron, tee us up.
Well, awesome. Well, excited to be back in the studio, and thanks for listening in. And so, setting some context for our discussion here on overcoming sales objections. So we really wanted to kind of peel back the layer. We've been hearing this a lot from founders where, they're interacting with their first set of customers or trying to convert people from, going from a pilot into becoming paying customers. And we're hearing often that in that process, we're not quite closing the deals because we don't feel like our sales plan or we don't quite have the right objection handling, or we've even outsourced our early sales to other individuals outside of that founding team. And we need to really identify what kind of these objection handles would look like. And so we really looked at that's not really the right question because at this stage, we're still in the process of co-developing our solution and trying to even validate still at this point, does our value proposition still resonate? And are they actually getting value from what we're ultimately trying to sell to them? And so are these objection handle or these objections that you might be seeing, are they actually just maybe not having alignment and seeing what your value and what you're creating, or are they actually truly the objection to say, hey, maybe this price is a little bit higher, a little bit low, but we really want to dive in a little bit deeper to peeling back that onion of where, you're not quite in the sales process yet. You're still in that discovery validation mode. And that ultimately will shift the way you have those conversations and the decisions you make as a founder as how you handle those conversations going forward.
Awesome. Yeah. Like you said, this is something that we've actually gotten a lot the last couple of weeks, and it's not something that we rarely got before, and so it was a weird surprise. It's actually a common theme, which is why I was like, hey, we haven't actually talked about this on the show before, which is kind of strange since we've been doing this for a couple of years. But since we got it so much lately, we're like, well, let's get together and talk about it. And so we're like, we want to bring this together with our usual game format. So we thought it might be a good idea to get Cass to give us some common sales objections that you might get or might seem like sales objections in that early stage process, and how we can then interpret that in the context of everything that you just said, Cameron, of, this is customer discovery. This is not the same thing as like of sales. We're actually after something fundamentally different. And so then what are they really telling us? And like, what is the actual lesson that we can learn from that? Because like one of the things that I would really recommend against doing in the early stages, when you're still, before you have the engine that works, before you're seeing repeatable process in sales, is doing things like creating sales objections, handling playbooks, and like complex, processes for working leads and all that, because those processes imply that we have a lot of certainty around who the lead is and what they want. And in the early stage, we don't. And so all we're doing is literally making it up, and not just making up one thing. We're making up both things and assuming them to be right, and then running everything through the process as if those things turned out to be true, and then ignoring all of the evidence that comes into the contrary and blaming everything on the sales process when you quite literally made fucking everything up at the start. So as you can tell, like this might get us a little fired up as we go. We might get the snark going on here. But maybe it'd be best to like start with before we get into the game with a couple of high level principles. I think you teased at all of them, but maybe we can bust them out a little bit. So Cameron, before you and I hit record, you had a couple that you went through. So I know you've got some. I'll start with the one that I talk about all the time, which is the difference between marketing and go to market. Because that's a big deal to me. If you've spent any time at all with my content, it's come up. So the idea is that the term marketing is confusing because it means two things. So it means marketing the strategy, which is what a serious marketing professional does for a living, and they're extraordinarily good at it. It's extraordinarily valuable for existing businesses. And then there's a second way we use the term marketing, which is marketing tactics. And they are also really good at tactics, but somebody who's really good at marketing strategy is probably paying somebody to do the tactics because it's a lower level shit, right? It's just the muscle that we can flex over and over again. And certainly it's skills that you can acquire, and there are best practices and all that, but it's just as tools. It's like running ads and stuff like that. So that's like the marketing term. And then in startups, we have this term called go-to-market, which is not a tactic at all. It's just a strategy. And that's where things get confusing, because we use marketing tactics as part of go-to-market strategy. But we do not use marketing strategy for the same reason that I mentioned before about sales, is that we don't have facts yet. And so if you go in the early stages of your startup and you hire a marketing agency, for example, to start targeting, what you think are your customers, like we've defined this ICP and we're going to start targeting them, what they're expecting you to give them are facts. This is our customer. This is their problem. This is how we make their lives better because of it. And here's how we do it. And here's our pricing and all that. You give them all of that, and they're going to come up with some hopefully extraordinarily good suggestions for getting in front of them and for getting their attention in the right place at the right time with the right offer and, in the right way, all of that stuff. But when we don't give them any of those facts, we're quite literally setting them up for failure. And those efforts almost never work well, because you're literally blindfolding them, spinning them around, and then trying to get them to play pin the tail on the startup. And it just doesn't work.
That should be our next game. That should be our next game.
Pin the tail on the startup.
Yeah. Which startup does this go on?
That would have been a good title for this episode too, Pin the tail on the startup. But but that's basically what we're doing, and we wonder why it doesn't work, right? But it's confusing because, again, the tactics of marketing we do need to employ. But that's good news, because the marketing strategy is a thing that none of us us entrepreneurs that don't come from a marketing background, we don't really know how to do that very well. Like, we can maybe do it a little bit because we've been exposed to it for a long time. Like, I know a little bit about marketing strategy, but it's not like I'm an expert in that. I would never claim that. But I know how to do the little things, and I can watch a video and ask ChatGPT how to help me set up a meta ad if I need something like that. I can get good enough for the early stages at the little tactics, and then I can get help and support from advisors and so forth if I need it. But the strategy that I need to put in place is go to market instead, which is, how do we find a way to get in front of an audience that we can't really well define yet, cheaply and efficiently, in a way that allows us to refine and define that audience as we are refining and defining our product. So co-creating those two things at the same time. And then as you get increasing clarity on that, then the go-to-market strategy becomes all about like, well, yes, we have the definitions, but we don't have the budget. So now that we have some definitions and some early evidence, but we don't have the budget to go full marketing, we can go to market instead. And so we use these other strategies, again, to do it cheaply and efficiently to get in front of those early customers. So that was the one that I wanted to kind of start with there. I don't know what else you want to
Awesome.
add in.
Yeah, I'll maybe just hit 3 real quick ones, and then maybe we'll hop into the game and see what Cass will throw our way and keep us on our toes. So the first is really thinking about, go-to-market strategy is all about really that validation first and then conversion later. And so really what I'm trying to hit at in terms of this first point is that, as you're going to market, there is a little bit more of this manual process, right? And part of that intentionality of having it be manual is you're learning from your customer. One, are they the right customer? Does the value proposition actually land with them? And are you using the right channels to actually get that message and value prop out to them? And so it's okay to be manual because you're starting to build that repeatable engine, but you can't build the repeatable engine without having the evidence to back that up going forward. And so thinking about one, you're kind of putting the pieces together to see, does this engine actually get going as you go forward? And then secondly is, as you think of like objection handling, I think like the high level thought is like thinking of this as a later stage tool. So when you're getting into these conversations of maybe now you're actually moving from that validation into like, okay, can I convert them to paying customers? Like, what does that look like? And what are they saying when they're actually like offering those objections? And so an example, I don't know if Cass will throw this out to us later, but, thinking of a founder here's from a potential customer, this is it's too expensive. And so their reaction is to automatically offer a discount, right? And so they're thinking about the price when it's actually potentially with the customer demonstrating that they don't see the value in what you're offering. And so they're disguising that like perceived value in the price versus it being like, they might not communicate, oh, I actually just don't see the value in what you're trying to offer. They'll disguise that in saying, oh, this seems too expensive and we don't have the budget. And so you're trying to objection handle versus unpacking that actual nuance of this not seeing a perceived value. And so then you can actually learn to say, how do I switch my language to better articulate this or actually uncover something that will actually uncrack that to where it's actually not too expensive. It was just now you have the language to better articulate that to that particular customer, or you learn that that's actually not your customer. And then the last one that I would ultimately hit on was, as you think about kind of this go-to-market, it's not about optimization. So again, it's about building that engine, and you haven't quite optimized anything yet because you have nothing to ultimately optimize. And so we often think about founders, it's great to run experiments and having a rigid process, but you're not really, doing A and B tests for headlines and call to actions just to see on what that actually looks like. You want to actually figure out like what the core problem is that you're solving, and does anyone actually care about this? And so you want to then set that experiment up in that way to where you're actually defining, are we targeting the right people with the right problem? And does this value proposition actually resonate with them versus like, oh, we need to change our call to action to this language and use red instead of green. You're getting into the fine tuning of more of that sales optimization versus is this actually resonating with people in terms of like the fundamentals of your go-to-market and the fundamentals of your startup. So those would be the 3 that I wanted to add on.
All right. Those are great. So now we've got 4 big principles that we've offered to the world. You are welcome, world, for us imparting our great wisdom. Wait, what are you drinking?
A Celsius?
What is it? Celsius.
So there was a funny video where this guy, he had like, he would drink. It's like he is on a Zoom call with his like I guess his boss or something, and so he'd have a sip of his Celsius, and then like the next drink he would have his drink of the White Claw, and like he was just like going back and forth. It was like, no, I swear it's a Celsius, and
well, as a coincidence, what I am drinking is going to be my frivolous thought. So we're going to come back to that later. Yeah. No, I'm. This is fun. All right, non-alcoholic, totally non-alcoholic. All right, so. Okay, let's do it. Let's dive in now that we've shared our wisdom with the world. Let's get to the snark. So we're gonna play a rousing game of overcoming sales objections. where getting to yes simply leads to the discovery that you're only being tolerated. And here's our first objection served up by Cass. Cass gives us objection number 1.
Yeah.
This looks interesting. Circle back with me in 6 months.
This looks interesting. Circle back with me in 6 months.
Yeah. I think basically what I'm hearing here is, I don't give a shit about what you're telling me, so why don't you go off? I'm going to wait for your startup to die so I don't have to tell you no.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's I would hope that comes across as a pretty clear no. So maybe like JDM, what would be some I think pitfalls that maybe people fall into when they do hear that? What might they, do in reaction to that in their potential sales, even though they should be, doing go to market?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that come to mind, right? And so let me start with the second, which is more of an answer to your question here. So this looks interesting. Circle back with me 6 months. Yes, I hope everybody hears that as a no. That is an unambiguous no that you're getting here. It's not about timing. At least not in any real sense, or at least not in any actionable sense. The like most of the time when you're hearing something like this, I think you're just getting brushed off. Mm-hmm. And it's like they don't want to tell you no, and and what founders are here, they'll glom onto this looks interesting, right? So they liked it. No, see, they liked it, and we hear this a lot with not only with early stage sales but also with fundraising, where an investor it's probably I don't know, twice a week where, I'm talking to some founder and they're like, hey, guess what? So-and-so was, what was interested, they said they just want to see, this little more traction and to come talk to them. So they told you no, that's what they told you. No, that's what just happened. And they're like, well, no, they just wanted to see, but they just want to see, they can't see. So they told you no. Right? That's what just happened. Let's process through this together, because I don't think you realize what happened. And that's not I don't say that to be mean. It's because that's a data point, right? And we want to figure out what that data means, because they told you no. And does it just literally mean you aren't far enough along with your traction? Maybe, right? And if that's true, then great. Now we know what to focus in on. But oftentimes it's not. We've talked, I think, probably on Zero to Traction before, about how oftentimes that is actually a thesis mismatch, that you're pitching to investors who fund further stage companies than you are. And so the solution actually is not to go pursue more traction. Although, I mean, that's always the solution to all things, I guess. But in order, for funding, that's not what the target, right? Because that's too far in the future. What you actually should be looking for right now is an investor who does invest at your stage of company, right? And so it's I think when you hear that from a customer, it's the same idea, is that we need to figure out why we're getting the no. That's the important part here, is why are we getting the no, not figuring out how we overcome it, because they told you no, how do we get around it? The thing that comes to mind for me is something that I know we've talked about a number of times, and that's the severity urgency thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so it could very well be that they're not just blowing you off. It could actually be that they do find this interesting, that it's oh, hey, yeah, I do have that problem, and this solution does seem interesting. Thanks for the demo, bro. But come back in 6 months. Why? Because it's not their number one priority. And so what they're saying there is that they're hoping that, oh, I hope I can cross all the other important things off my list to create space for this other problem. And you can't build a business off that, which actually means that you're targeting the wrong customer. And this is where the really big difference between the sales side of things and the early stage discovery, validation, go to market side of things is that we need to figure out who is then. So one of two things is true in that scenario. Either they're not our customer, or it's the wrong product, right? Is it the wrong customer? Is it the wrong product? One of those two things is true. And so if they have these bigger problems that are number one on the list, can we solve those? How adjacent are those to the ones that we're solving? Are those interesting to us to solve? Is that a bigger opportunity there? Or is it just the wrong customer? And if we just take this thing to a different customer who looks different because those other problems aren't their number one problems, or because this problem is so severe for them that it is going to become their number one problem, and who is that, right? And so it's going through that process and learning what the no means in the context of customer discovery. That's what comes to mind to me.
Yeah, no, the urgency was definitely the thing that came to mind for me. So thanks for tackling that. And I guess where my mind went was outcomes of continuing this in like a sales process is like oftentimes then founders kind of put them into like their weighted funnel of sales, right? It's like, oh well, like this potential contract value could be X and they're at this stage in our funnel, and then they start that process of like, oh, we'll update them every so and so, and so you're really spending a lot of time trying to curate them in terms of this funneled process, even though they might not actually be your customer, or you're spending that time trying to like appease this particular segment, even though they're not the early adopter that's like ready to sign up here and now. And so you're spending time trying to either build to this potential customer, even though you could be spending that time actually targeting and trying to find that early adopter that then is much easier to kind of convert into that potential sale going forward. So I think it's like those opportunity costs of trying to spend and cultivate that time of like, I'm going to take this, much longer sales approach because it just takes 6 months to convert these people, versus that early adopter might actually be chomping at the bit to sign up. And there might be a process after that fact, particularly if it's like a larger like enterprise customer, but they would have that urgent sense of urgency and saying like, okay, like we want to hop in now, but there is a process you have to kind of go through in order to like close that deal. That's a different signal than like, oh, let us know 6 months from now when you got X, Y, and Z done.
Awesome. Well, let's rate this. Let's rate this one. We're going to give it a reality rating where 0 is a polite lie, and 10 is an actual objection that you might solve, right? So higher the score, the more based in reality that really was as an objection. The lower the score, the more they're just lying to your face. We give it that reality rating. And as a reminder, when we do these 0 to 10 rankings, we don't do 7s.
So, I mean, I'm close to like a 0, 1, 2 area. I mean, I think it's just definitely like I think the thing I would want to unpack, right, and that would be being a part of the conversation is, are they seeing the potential pain point? And that would be, I guess a higher score. If there actually was a pain point, but there's not severity, then you're kind of playing in the 1 or 2 element. But if they're not really there, it's an easy kind of way out of having that conversation. And then I think the negative impacts again are you might be targeting more of those, and you're like, oh well, we're getting a lot of these people that are 6 months out. Maybe we just have to build our 6-month sales process to get these people to convert, and then that's just you're building a repeatable engine for a customer that's never going to get there, and that's a big challenge.
That is the big thing, right? That's like the thing that like, well, we're going to end on this point because this is like the big one. We're going to triple underline, double click, zoom in on this particular point here, because like what you're doing is like by going down this road is intending to spend time and resources you don't have chasing what is still an assumption where the data is starting to stack against you. Like that's what we're doing here. And so like to say like, oh, well, it's just a long sales cycle and we need to account for the sales cycle. You can't afford for that here. And there are cases where long sales cycles are unavoidable, right? But you're going to get the much stronger signals much earlier in the process. And so that like, well, sometime you can ask Cameron and I about long contracting cycles and how long we have some experience with this. Extremely long. And so that's real, but it's not going to come in something like this. You're literally just committing suicide here. You're just like you're like, at least with like, seppuku is fast, right? Knife in, slice to the sides, guts out, right? This is like when you're watching the show or the movie and there's the dastardly villain who practically twirling his snidely whiplash, mustache here, and he stabs or shoots somebody right in the right part of the gut so that they bleed out slowly over time. That's the kind of suicide that you're committing here, if you'll forgive the vivid imagery. I could be convinced to go to a 2 on this, but because of the danger, it's a 0 or 1.
Dangerous. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. All right. Should we do another?
Let's do it.
All right. Boom. Let's roll. All right, Cass, what you got? All right. Number 2. We already have a tool for this. ouch. I mean, like, so I get why like this can be a sales objection, right? Like when you're in a proven market and they're saying they already have a tool for this, and you can pivot to why this is better and cost savings, and now you're in this convincing mode. But what you were actually just told when you're in an early stage startup is they don't see enough value, potential value in switching to even hear you out. Like that's a pretty like you're in a battle over features that you already lost because they're using something that works well enough. And if you find yourself in the world where you're having to convince them that it doesn't work well enough, and you have to convince them that something else can work better, you're just burnt. Like you're just like, this is the Joker with the pile of the mob's money and just setting it on fire. At this point, you can't win with this. Is the early adopter pyramid, right? They have the bottom of the universe who has the problem. Then they have to know that they have the problem, be actively looking for a solution, be so desperate for when they hack one together out of spare parts, and have the resources to switch. That's time, money, brain capacity, all that kind of stuff. And so if they're already down at the bottom of the pyramid where they don't even see that they have the problem that you're trying to solve for them, which is what they're telling you here, that they do not have the problem, then, like what are we even doing here? I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, I would say like the big learning for me, and I'd be curious if you agree, would be this isn't your customer, right? It's not really an underserved part of the market, right? If they already have a tool, maybe maybe there's area for improvement, but it's just a small additional value they're getting out. It's not this like leap in value or a transformation of what they're ultimately trying to get out of a potential new product or service. And so oftentimes, particularly if it's B2B, the like inertia going against you to like actually bring on a new solution could be really challenging. So even if it's like it's solving their pain points 5 out of 10, it's much more challenging. You have to have a huge leap in value for them to actually say, okay, we're going to bring on this new product or service, because it's just going to take a lot of time and energy to do that. And so it's part of it is like, when you're hearing this was like, okay, maybe this isn't our customer, and why, and then how can we define like why they're not our customer, so we can actually find that underserved part of the market that's looking for these two different elements that we can offer or benefits that we can provide. So my mind jumps straight to kind of that competitive landscape, the X and Y axis, where we kind of dive into that top right quadrant, which is really the underserved part of the market and who isn't getting those benefits that we're ultimately offering to the market. And if they're saying they already have the tool, that means they're okay with the benefits that they're getting in this other element. And so now you can kind of say, okay, this isn't our customer persona. This we need to then go back to the drawing board and identify who that person is. But I think, I mean, I guess if people are objection handling, I'd be curious of why they're probably saying, oh, well, we have this feature, we could build this feature, right? And you could see the like challenge that comes from these types of things is then you start to over engineer your product for a customer like this that's never actually going to convert. And so you start going down that rabbit hole of like, okay, well, we can build this. And then now you're not actually building for someone who's going to be your customer.
So let me ask this in the form of a question, right? So, the sales objection handling process is basically like, we encountered this obstacle, let's pitch harder, right? And I know that there's more nuance to that, but that's basically what we're doing. So instead, if they're getting this, like, we already have a tool for this, instead of pitching harder, what should the founders be asking that prospect?
So I would ask maybe, I would ask something along the lines of like a story related to, well, how are you currently using this solution to solve your problems? And can you share the last time you used it? And that will kind of unpack, I think, some of the like nuances of the value that they're getting from it and what they're ultimately trying to achieve and like what their particular problems are. And so it's less of it being like, I'm going to try to sell you. I'm going to try to understand like what that looks like and even how they came to landing on this solution and like what was some of that process. So you can unpack and start to see, oh, these are the patterns of the customers that are or the players in the market that aren't our customers, or those that are actually our customers are doing these types of behaviors. And so we now know we can target that particular set of the market.
Yeah, I really like that question a lot, because the best case scenario, like, let's say that you're right I'm putting that in kind of air quotes, but like you're right that this solution would be so much better for them, and that they're just not seeing it, quote unquote, whatever that means. Now that's usually not the case, right? But like let's assume for a second that is. Then what this question can do, this asking them what they're doing right now and how they came up, upon that and what they're seeing there, what you're going to end up surfacing, if that's true, is the positioning. Right. So like they're going to talk through this whole process, and then they're going to end up telling you where the problems currently are. Those problems are opportunities. And so if you can, if you're truly solving for those pains that they're seeing, right, then that's where your positioning is. Then what happened was you just missed the mark when you talked about it the first time, right? And that may or may not help with this particular deal. But now okay, when I'm talking to these people in the future, I just got the positioning wrong. The niche is actually in this other thing that's really important to them. And that's the best case scenario. And if you don't start to get those, right, where they're talking through this whole thing and they're not even really getting to or mentioning the problem where you're trying to position yourself in, then they're telling you they're not your customer. And so what you're going to try to do at that point from a sales objective perspective is demonstrate, oh, this problem exists. So you're going to try to lead them down this sales path where you're trying to tell them that this problem exists. But again, go back to your early adopter pyramid, like they're all the way at the bottom of the pyramid. They're not even on step number 2 at that point. And so when you start getting those signals, right, like could you theoretically close some of these deals? Yeah, if you're a talented enough salesperson, you probably will close some of these deals, but you're not going to close enough to make it into a good business. You're going to spend so much time educating in sales because you don't have the right customer yet, or you don't have the right product yet, or you don't have the right positioning yet. And instead of trying to learn all of those things, you're just assuming that you have them, trying to brute force your way through a sales process, knowing that some of them are going to convert at the end of the day. And again, that nobody's putting money into that. So like you can kiss investment goodbye. And second, like the chances of you actually turning that into something successful are pretty darn small.
Right. Well, and it's just for me, it goes to, it's just going to be much more costly from a time standpoint to like close those deals and, in terms of like pushing through that sales process, but also then the like solution that you're actually creating is likely going to be much more robust, because in order to actually demonstrate that value at that bottom of the pyramid, you're going to have to probably create more elements than what your early adopter is looking for. And so you're probably going to overbuild for that first set of actual early adopter customers.
So what do we rate this one? Reality rating. So 0, polite lie, 10, a real objection.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a real, it was a little more clear that, they're already using something. So I don't know, I'd probably say it's like middle of the ground, but it's again, like the strategy and how you approach it, right? If you take more of that story discovery, like you can unpack to see if it was truly an objection or if it was actually, them just kind of politely saying it. So I think there would have to be more context for me and kind of some of the diligence and like getting to this conversation. Like have they done a lot of the like persona work to understand that this might actually be an early adopter, or is this just something like where, is their second time having a call or something like that? And so I think the context would help, but I would say middle of the road. What about you?
I think so too. My gut says 5 because, but that's again subject to doing that pivot and saying like, oh, I'm going to not hear that as an objection, but as an opportunity to discover, because then I actually think you could be learning something super interesting and it might not be a no, right? It's just that you can't tackle it as an objection. You have to tackle it as a learning opportunity, turn that learning into validated learning, and turn that question into validated learning. And then once you have that, then you can kind of go back in the process like, oh, I see now. And even if you lose the sale, you might not lose the category of customers. Whereas with the previous example, I think we've lost the whole category of customers, right?
Right.
So 5, should we say 5?
5. Yeah.
We'll give it a 5. All right. Passing that on to Cass. I think Cass is roasting our objection now. They say 5 on the reality rating scale. The Schrodinger's objection could be real, could be a trap. Yes.
So does Cass want this to be just binary, a 0 or 1? It's either delusion or not.
It's 0 or attraction. It's one of the two.
Oh, that's the name of the podcast.
Oh, what do you know? Yes. Okay, cool. Cass says the next one here is the most seductive fake out of all.
Ooh.
You ready?
Yeah, I want to
Here
be.
we go. Third objection. If you build these 3 features, I'd consider using it.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're right. That is the most seductive fake out of all. Yeah. Okay, can we first just said, I don't know if Cass is punking us here or just like trying to bait us, but I'd consider using it. First of all, consider and commit are 2 very different words. And so like consider is a no, right? So like I'd consider using it. They're not even telling like just no, walk away. Like that's a no, right? Like I would explore why they're looking for those features, what the problem is that they're solving for, like try to explore that space a little bit because it probably again goes back to what their severe and urgent problem is, and it isn't the one that you're solving. But aside like from those like little learnings along the way, saying that they considered is super soft. It's not a commitment, right? Can you push that toward a letter of intent, and like can we get to a commitment? But even if we have the commitment here, this is where we get into a lot of trouble because then you start building features for one customer. And we don't know if that's a category of customers or if we're basically just building ourselves into a service company and we're just going to build custom solutions for every customer that we encounter. So, yikes.
Yikes, indeed. Yeah, and I don't have a ton more to add. I mean, you just definitely can just go down the trap of like trying to then build for this customer, and that's not a repeatable process. Certainly going forward, as you're saying, turn more into that services company versus kind of this repeatable engine that scales over time. I think the thought that came to mind, and we talk a lot about, and if I don't use the right term, like the metacognition of startups, right? And entrepreneurship, and like coming in with a sales mentality, you're kind of like, okay, I just want to close the deal, and yeah, we can build these features, but then not really realizing, one, like obviously there's costs that come to it in terms of the solution, but how that fundamentally will just shift the way your business model works, right? If you continue to take on these contracts that require you to have a customized build, then you're not really creating that scalable startup that you're probably trying to pitch to investors. And so you're like, oh, we close these deals, but then not really accounting for that they're both customized solutions going forward. And like if that's your means to closing the customers, then that can be a real challenge for the theory of your startup going forward.
Totally. So on the reality rating, 0 to 10 here. Like I'm thinking like I was initially wanting to rate it about like the last one, right? Because there could be something there that's interesting to discover, but the consider is causing a big problem for me. And so I want to knock it down for that reason, but also for the reason that we knocked down the first one so low was because it's an expensive mistake to make, and there's really nothing more expensive than adding features on the hopes that it might convert somebody.
Right.
So I want to knock it down. I don't know. I'm thinking like a 4.
Yeah,
3?
I'd probably go 3.
3?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go with you. We'll go with a 3. We'll go with a 3. Should we do one last one?
Yeah, let's do a quick one.
Let's do a quick one. What you got for us, Cass? All right, the final round. Objection number 4. Oh, Cass is giving us some budget-flavored misdirection here. You ready? We don't have budget for this right now.
Right now, but maybe in the future.
Yes.
So I've used this before, and it's definitely a polite no. It's definitely a polite.
Oh, you mean you've told this to other people before? Oh man. Whew. Whew. All right, founders beware. You hear that from Cameron. He's told you what that means.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think my snarky reply would be like, this is their way of telling you it's not important enough for them to go find money for.
Right.
So we can go back to severity, urgency here, but the objection kind of ish, like the objection-ish kind of thing that a lot of founders try to handle here is to tweak with price. They're hearing this as a pricing critique, and so they'll try to offer a discount. And I think if you hear we don't have budget for this right now, and you start offering discounts to try to close them, I'm going to personally revoke your membership in the Founder Club. I think you've committed entrepreneurial malpractice.
There you go. Yeah.
And you are about to be disfoundered. Disfoundered.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think the signal is pretty clear that, one, it's not important to them right now, and I think it's just a polite way to say no, that they don't want to put resources towards it. So, I guess, again, like, if you're like, maybe the question back to you, JDM, is like, if you were to get this, do you just politely say, okay, thank you, and hang up? Or like, what would the discovery process look like to take some learnings of like, oh, this isn't my customer. So how do I, define that negative space so I don't talk to these future people currently here and now?
Yeah. So I think a couple things come to mind. So one is there is the chance that there is actually a budgetary problem, right? So if you're targeting like really cash-strapped businesses or really cash-strapped people, and they literally just don't have the budget for it, like that is something I'd want to learn, because I don't find that a very attractive customer segment, right? So then we're going to be getting into like, what is it about our hypothesis that is attracting those who don't have the money? And so that'd be one thing. When you hear this in the B2B context, I don't think it's usually about money, though. Yeah. Did you want to add on to that?
Well, so just like I see this a lot when people try to target like small businesses. They're like, oh, we're selling a POS system for restaurants or something. And, they're like, it's a hard sell because they might, or we're going to sell like this, AI ad something tool for, small businesses, and they just don't have the resources. And so you're kind of targeting this group that like is, counting, okay, do I pay for this or do I pay for this? And so that can lead to challenging. And one of the things is that they might convert to a customer, but they might have a high percentage of churn, especially if it takes some time to deliver that value, because if they don't see it maybe immediately, then they're like, okay, the inertia is going against it, I'm going to switch to the next thing just because I'm like, counting pennies to stay alive.
Yeah. Whew, that sounds dangerous. As a customer segment. So, but in the case where that's not true, right? Where it's not it's probably a minority of cases anyway, where it's really about a budget, right? Most of the time, budgets are just like, where you put money is just signals of priorities. And so they've just signaled that it's not an important priority for them. And that's going to be most of the time when people are saying, but using budget as an excuse, it's just because, it's just not a priority right now. And so then I think there is a learning opportunity to answer your original questions, because we want to figure out why then. Like, what are their big problems that they're solving now? What are, how are they trying to solve this problem now? What are the consequences of this issue? Are there other problems that are really big for them that they're trying to solve? And again, how adjacent are those to what we're trying to solve, and so forth. So, yeah.
Cool.
Well, I mean, I think that's all the time we've got for this episode of Zero to Traction. We have thoroughly roasted the sales process. So hopefully when you are with your early stage customers and you're trying to learn from them, trying to get to validated learning and a repeatable sales process, hopefully as you start hearing sales objections, you hear them for what they are, which is not an objection to be overcome, but an opportunity to learn about the customer. That's the big takeaway. If you remember nothing else from this episode, remember that.
Yep.
And with that, it would not be Zero to Traction if we did not start.
We buried the learning at 43 minutes in, so hopefully you listened to this part.
Well, this is what we call survivorship bias, because all of our current listeners did in fact listen that long.
Yeah, exactly.
So we will never learn about the ones who didn't, because we don't really get those kinds of that level of stats on most podcasts. So bummer. But now, frivolous thoughts. We got to have our frivolous thoughts. You got a frivolous thought? You want me to kick it
Yeah.
off?
No, I came prepared. I came prepared today.
Excellent.
So no, when I saw this one, I was like, oh, this would be a good one, and it actually kind of ties to marketing in general, but not go to market. So I caveat that. But the frivolous thought was I saw recently, so Burger King launched this FIFA campaign, and so one of the things that often like these big corporations are trying to use is to have like big name brands or influencers associated with their company. And so one of the strategies that they used, which was I thought was really creative, was Burger King sponsored a like basically tier 3 team in like the English football league called Stevenage. And so when you sponsored a team, they had the big Burger King logo right on their jerseys. And so that allowed them to then in the FIFA game have Burger King on their chest. And so what they did was they created this challenge where I don't know exactly the gameplay within FIFA, but basically where as you play online, you collect scores, and then you can basically purchase players. And so they created this challenge where if you win with Stevenage and you do a promotion for it, you can like get access to a free Whopper or something. And so basically all these people started playing with Stevenage, but they then started to get enough points where they could get Lionel Messi and like all of these big time players. And so basically they got to have the Burger King brand on all these high influence football players like Messi and Ronaldo. And so they didn't have to pay these players millions of dollars. They just, gave out Whoppers and sponsored a third tier football club. And so it's kind of this case study on, getting your brand associated with some big name players. So that was kind of an interesting strategy to me. And I thought that was a pretty innovative approach for, Burger King, I guess, nonetheless. So,
What is there something startups can take away from this?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it was like, they're continuing to think scrappy as they like got bigger as a corporation. But they find, they found a leverage point with their customers who, wanted to see their brand associated probably with some of these like high performing athletes. Not that like if you eat a Whopper, you're going to, score a goal in the Premier League or something like that. But, that their customer segments look to these influencers. And if there was a way to get association with them, that might help for visibility. But I think there was that component, and then they kind of empowered the masses to get connected to them. So I don't know if there's a direct correlation there, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting strategy that I wanted to share.
It is. It's always fun to hear some of the. The term innovative is kind of overused, so I'll just say creative. But some of the creative strategies that legacy businesses use to try to outflank, right, in the marketplace, and take some of those strategies that are like the David and Goliath or pirates versus admirals type approach.
The pirates in the Navy.
Pirates in the Navy, right? When they're just when in this case, it's a pirate working for the Navy. So it's
yep. So you're a pirate in the Navy.
Yes. Oh, yes. I got your joke now. Well done.
Well, I didn't. That was a Tunde Aviki. He's does like that corporate innovation. I think we talked a little bit about some of his work, but that's kind of like for the entrepreneur, the corporate innovator, trying to like balance the politics of being in a corporation, but then also being able to be innovative and push things forward.
I've done entrepreneurship. It's hard.
It's hard.
Not how I choose to spend my time. Well, cool. Well, my frivolous thought today is very different. So, a friend of mine, his name is Sam. He runs Sam LaRobardiere. He runs a small chain of coffee shops and coffee roasters, and they're great, high quality. They win awards. It's awesome. It's called Theory Coffee. And they're not local here, so that kind of sucks. But every time I travel where they are, I always get some. And when I saw him recently, when actually with Cameron, when you and I were up at the Northern California Venture Conference, I was chatting with him afterward, and he has this new business that's called the Podium Coffee Club, and the basic idea is that it's a monthly coffee subscription like you would get, but these are all high quality roasts that you wouldn't necessarily just find at like the grocery store, or that you definitely won't find at the grocery store. Actually, I'm going to clarify that. But that you probably won't really find anywhere else. And because he's got such a passion for quality and coffee that I've experienced over the years as I've watched his journey as an entrepreneur too. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a try. So I told him on the spot I was gonna give it a try. I came home, I signed up, and I got my first bag of this last week. And so they have 2 tiers, and so I went with the second tier, which is a couple dollars more per bag, but it's supposed to be a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more unique. And in case you're wondering what that is, let me just start with this, okay? So the one that I got, which is a Colombian coffee. I've had Colombian coffee 1,000 times. I'm sure you have too. This one has the tasting notes of, are you ready for this? Banana, bubblegum, and apple cider.
Ooh, interesting.
3 things I would never choose to pair in the real world.
No,
but I'm like, so as soon as I see this, I'm like, what the F did Sam send me? And so what it actually, so I did not know this, but there's a new sort of like innovative way of fermenting coffee. It's called a banana co-ferment, where they quite literally take, so after you harvest the coffee cherries, and you like remove their maybe pulp, or you remove the outer skin, and you put them in the tanks to ferment.
Mm-hmm.
You put bananas literally in the tank, ripe bananas in the tank, and so the bacteria and the yeast all go to town, right, as it's fermenting on the sugars that are in there, and you get this. That's where the banana comes from. It actually does impart a banana flavor, and the banana with the apple cider gives it like this bananas Foster type flavor. It's very complex. It's a lighter roast than you might be used to if you just have like store-bought like Colombian coffees. You might have like a darker thing. Like this is a lighter, like third wave roast for sure. And honestly, like it's quite great. This is a coffee from Huila, which is in the southern part of Colombia. It's got a banana co-ferment. I don't taste the bubblegum, if I'm being honest. But honestly, like I just like, I can't get enough. This is amazing coffee. This is delicious coffee, and I don't have any equity in Sam's company or anything. He doesn't even know I'm talking about this here. But this is you can try Podium Coffee. They ship all over the U.S. if you're wanting to do that thing. But even if you don't, this is my plea, or my invitation, I should say, for you to go a little adventurous. Try some adventurous coffee. Try something that's totally weird, like a banana co-ferment, and like just go through the joy of like having something completely different as part of your daily routine. And it's just it's awesome. So strongly recommend. I don't think I'd want to drink a banana co-ferment like for years straight, but I'm more than happy to drink my way through this bag. So
ooh, there
awesome.
you go. I love it.
Well,
thanks.
Yeah.
From Whoppers to banana co-ferments. There you go.
Obviously, we're just going with the classy theme.
I don't know. I guess it speaks to our personalities. I guess the BK lounge to the coffee wine, or the coffee.
Did you just touch your nose in a way that signaled something about me?
I don't know. Maybe.
Oh.
For those that can't, they won't know.
It's not, but like, it's not, I do want to be clear. This is not like expensive coffee, quote unquote. Like if you're used to buying third wave coffee, like if you're here in Sacramento and you buy your coffee from World Traveler or Temple or Old Soul or Chocolate Fish, this is like basically in line with that. You have to pay, there's the shipping cost that adds on a little bit, but otherwise it's within a couple of dollars of these bags. This is not like, I'm not buying $50, bags of 12 ounce coffee. Like, I'm not doing that. This is, it's $20, $22, something like that. It's like totally reasonable if you drink third wave coffee. So, but it's fun. So have some fun coffee.
There you go.
All right. Well, that is definitely all the time we have for Zero Attraction. As always, Cameron, awesome to hang out.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, and thanks everyone for having us in your ear for another week. And we'll be back next week, and hope to drop 1 or 2 gems for you. So
awesome. All right. Well, until next week, I bid you adieu.